Today I'm going to show you how to make an old Tudor toy called a cup and ball game. The object is to flip the ball up and catch it in the cup, just like that. To make a cup and ball game, we need 3 pieces of wood. One to make the handle, second piece to make the cup, and the third piece to make the ball. This piece of wood is going to become the handle, and it's an old chair rail that I'm recycling today. We're just marking the centres so that we can put the piece of wood onto the lathe and turn it from square into round. Right, so now the piece of wood is now mounted between the lathe centres. This one is free to revolve on a ball bearing race that's inside it. This one is driven by the electric motor that powers the lathe. We're going to turn this square piece of wood to round using this particular chisel called a spindle roughing gouge. This is a skew chisel. It's a really useful tool, but perhaps the most difficult of all the chisels to become familiar with. Every time I make a piece of wood round, I make a practice cut with my skew chisel. Right, so now what we've created here are 2 handles for the cup and ball games, but they're still joined in the middle. So this is my rack of sandpaper, and you can see that it starts off at 120, 180, 240, 320, 400, 600, 800 and 1200. That's the different grit values of the sandpaper. And if you feel a piece of 800 paper, people would say it's smooth. But when you see it in use on the lathe, you can still see sawdust coming off the piece of wood that's being sanded. Right, so because if wood gets wet, the grain will lift, we just need to use some sanding sealer. This is a block of wax. The wax I use is a mixture of carnauba wax and beeswax, which gives a lovely shine. If you only use beeswax, the finished surface looks good, but as soon as you touch it, because it's so soft, then it smudges. So I'm just going to cut off the stumps and part them off. There's 2 handles for the cup and ball games. So this is the piece of wood that I've prepared to make the ball with. You can see that I've marked the centres, and now it fits onto the lathe. So we go back to the spindle roughing gouge. Another practice cut with the skew chisel. So the square piece of wood is now round. Right, what we have to imagine is this is going to be the ball, this pencil line is the equator, this is going to be the North Pole, and this is going to be the South Pole. Right, this is a bowl gouge. You can see that the difference between the bowl gouge and the spindle roughing gouge is that the flute is shallower and it's also narrower. So the first thing we need to do is to take a measurement around the equator and mark it off to show where the North Pole is and the South Pole. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to make 2 grooves, one above the North Pole, one below the South Pole, so that the piece of wood that remains in the centre is going to be our ball. What I'm doing here is just clearing away some of the waste wood so that I've got good access to the piece that's going to be the ball. The equator line has to remain on the ball. Making the initial cuts. That's about as round as I can turn a ball by hand and eye. Now this is a different live centre. The live centre is one that revolves on its shaft. This is a dead centre. You can see that there's no bearing in that, so that the drive that comes from the motor is going to make this turn. The problem now is to make perfectly round what is roughly round. When this ball now turns around and I get a high bit of wood and a low bit of wood, as it goes round I'm going to see high low, high low, high low, high low, and I'm going to shave all the high bits off. We've got the handle, we've got the ball, now we just want the cup and the piece of string. This is the bit of wood that I've prepared to make the cup. It's already mounted on a 4-jaw chuck. This is the same as the other skew chisel, it's just a larger one. So this stage is hollowing out the inside of the cup to accept the ball. What we're doing now is just marking on the front face of the cup the diameter of the ball. You'll notice that I made the ball before I made the cup, because I can easily make a cup to fit a ball. It's a lot more difficult to make a ball to fit a cup. We've turned the hollow for the cup so the ball will sit in there. We're going to shape the outside to make it a nice shape to look at. We've measured the spigot on the top of the handle, and we've got a cutting tool here which is going to make a hole in the bottom of the cup for this to fit into. I've just measured the depth of where I know the hole, the cup is, and I need a hole 1 inch deep, so I'll put a little marker using a bit of insulation tape on the cutter. So if you need a depth stop and you haven't got a professionally made one, take a piece of wood, drill a hole in it, wedge your pencil in, put the wood on, push the pencil down, and there's the depth of the hole. Now you can put it across there, and you can mark the hole like that. You've just seen me use the skew chisel to cut a couple of little V cuts in the side of the cup, and we're just going to blacken those V cuts with a friction burn, just for a little bit of decoration. So we've got the handle, we've got the cup, and we've got the ball. This is the cup and ball game that I made earlier, and the final step on the one that you've just seen me make will be to drill a hole in the ball and a hole in the side of the cup and stick a little bit of cord on so that the ball and the cup and the handle all stay together. So that was my masterclass. If any of you take it up having seen this, I hope you enjoy it.